The night she finally told me the truth. A man from her past showed up outside our home. And in that moment, I realized. I wasn't just fighting for our relationship anymore. I was fighting for her life. I thought the first signs of a relationship falling apart would be loud. Shouting. Slamming doors. Nights spent on the couch, pretending the movie playing on the screen was more interesting than the silence thickening between two people. But for us, it didn't start with anything dramatic. It began with something much quieter. Something that felt more like absence than conflict. A subtle loneliness that slipped into the apartment long before any fight ever did. And somehow, I felt more alone lying next to her than I ever had sleeping by myself. Every morning she woke before me, but she stopped saying goodbye. I would hear the front door click shut, and I'd stare at the ceiling, wondering why it suddenly hurt so much. It wasn't like she used to kiss me passionately or hold me like her life depended on it, but she used to whisper a soft, "See you tonight." Just that. One sentence. And now even that was gone, as if it had been quietly erased from our routine. Maybe that's when I started feeling like a ghost wandering around my own life. I'd make coffee for two, out of habit, then pour hers down the sink when it turned cold. I'd read her favorite mug's imprint again and again, even though I already knew every letter. Love is a daily choice. And sometimes, on particularly heavy mornings, I would whisper to myself, then why are we choosing everything except each other? The strange part was, we didn't argue. Not even once. It was as if we were both waiting for the other to acknowledge that something had shifted. But neither of us dared to be the first. Instead, we kept pretending. Pretending that her late nights at work were normal. Pretending that my constant overthinking was just stress. Pretending that the way she'd flinch when I touched her shoulder didn't mean anything. Pretending that the bed between us didn't feel like two separate continents. I noticed the distance before she ever admitted it. The way she guarded her phone, holding it just a little too tightly, turning it face down even when she wasn't using it. The way she'd smile at something invisible when she read her messages, a smile that didn't belong to me anymore. I told myself it could be work. A friend. Something harmless. But jealousy is a strange parasite, it doesn't need proof to survive. It just needs space. And we had plenty of that. The worst part was the way my emotions contradicted themselves. I loved her. I genuinely did. But part of me also feared her. Or rather, feared the truth she was hiding. I felt like I was always one step behind her, trying to catch up to a version of her I no longer recognized. Sometimes I wondered if she felt the same about me. Evenings were the hardest. She'd come home exhausted, offering me a tired smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Long day," she'd say. And I'd nod, pretending I didn't notice the faint perfume on her coat that definitely wasn't hers. I'd pretend that the way she avoided eye contact was just fatigue. We'd eat dinner quietly, two strangers sharing a table, sharing air, but nothing else. I kept telling myself, this is just a phase. All couples go through difficult periods. But deep down, something was growing inside me, something cold, like fear mixed with resentment. A voice whispering that maybe she wasn't just drifting away. Maybe she was being pulled away. And I had no idea what or who was pulling her. One night, as I lay awake listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, I realized the thing I feared the most wasn't losing her. It was discovering that I had already lost her, and had simply been too afraid to admit it. And in that quiet darkness, I knew something was coming. Something inevitable. Something that would break open everything we'd been quietly avoiding. I could feel the tension simmering beneath the silence, like the vibration of a storm gathering far away. And deep down, I knew one truth. We were standing at the edge of something neither of us was ready to face. The shift became undeniable on a Thursday evening. I remember it clearly because everything felt slightly off from the moment I walked through the door. The lights in the living room were off, even though she always turned them on before I arrived. Her keys were tossed carelessly onto the counter, something she never did. She had these strangely meticulous habits, little rituals that made her feel predictable and familiar. But that night, all of that was missing. I found her sitting at the dining table, scrolling through her phone with her head bowed low, the glow illuminating her face in an oddly distant way. When she looked up, her expression flickered, barely noticeable, but enough to sting. A moment of surprise. A moment of disappointment. I couldn't tell, and maybe I didn't want to. "You're home early," she said, her voice strained and too steady, like someone putting effort into sounding normal. I shrugged, pretending I didn't hear the defensive tone. Meeting ended sooner. Wanted to have dinner together. "Nice," she replied, but her phone vibrated, and her eyes immediately dropped down to it again. I watched her thumb hover over the screen, hesitating, before she locked it and placed it face down. Not slowly. Almost aggressively. I had never wanted to read someone's mind more. We started cooking together out of habit, though neither of us seemed fully present. The silence between us felt heavier than usual, like it was pressing against the walls. Trying to suffocate something. Perhaps both of us. As she chopped vegetables, her phone vibrated again. She didn't touch it, but her shoulders tightened. I saw her jaw clench for the briefest second. I swallowed hard. "Do you want to get that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "No. It's nothing." She didn't even look up. The way she said "nothing" made it sound like everything. We sat down to eat, but she barely touched her food. She kept glancing toward the hallway as if expecting someone to walk in. Or as if she wished someone else would. Halfway through dinner, I finally broke the silence. "Is everything okay?" Her fork froze midair. "Why wouldn't it be?" "I don't know." I tried to breathe evenly. "You seem distant." She exhaled sharply, setting her fork down with too much force. "I'm just tired." "Tired," I repeated, a bitter laugh slipping out before I could stop it. You've been tired for weeks. Her eyes narrowed, pain flashing through them. What do you want me to say? The truth, I said quietly. She looked at me then, really looked. And for a moment, I saw something fractured behind her eyes. Guilt. Fear. Confusion. Before I could decipher it, she broke the gaze and pushed her plate away. I don't want to do this right now. Then when? My voice cracked, startling even me. We keep avoiding everything. She stood up abruptly, grabbing her phone. Not tonight. That was when it happened, the moment I still replay sometimes, wondering if everything could have changed if I'd reacted differently. As she turned, the screen of her phone lit up, and I caught a glimpse of the message. Not the full text, just 3 words that might as well have been a knife. Did he leave? My breath hitched. She froze when she realized I'd seen it. For a second, the entire room felt suspended in air. I didn't say anything at first. Neither did she. The silence felt like a drumbeat inside my head. Finally, I forced the words out. Who asked that? She didn't answer. Instead, she locked her phone and took a shaky breath. Please don't make this into something it's not. How can I not? I stepped toward her, but she stepped back. Even that tiny movement shattered something inside me. It's complicated, she whispered. Those 2 words hurt more than any confession could have. Complicated meant she wasn't ready to tell me the truth. Or she didn't want to. Or she was protecting someone who shouldn't have been protected. I felt something break inside my chest, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like the soft snap of a thread pulled too tight. Are you seeing someone? I asked. She shook her head immediately, but her eyes didn't match the gesture. No. It's not like that. Then what is it like? She looked down at the floor, her voice trembling the slightest bit. I can't talk about it. Why? I pressed. Because you'll hate me, she whispered. The room went still. My hands felt cold. My pulse hammered in my ears. Whatever she meant by that, whatever truth she was hiding, it wasn't small. It wasn't harmless. It wasn't something we could brush aside. And in that moment, I knew, we had finally reached the first real crack. The first fracture that couldn't be ignored, or minimized, or buried under routine. The moment where the truth started pressing against the walls we had built around it. She walked past me without another word, disappearing into the bedroom. I didn't follow. I couldn't. Instead, I sank into the chair she'd just left, staring at my untouched meal, and felt the weight of something dark settling over us. Something irreversible. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake in the dim light spilling in from the street lamp outside, listening to the soft hum of the radiator and the occasional shift of her weight on the mattress beside me. She had her back turned, curled toward the edge of the bed as if she were trying to make herself smaller, or trying to disappear entirely. Maybe both. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the message I'd seen. Did he leave? Every time the words echoed in my mind, my chest tightened until it was almost painful. I didn't want to imagine what that message meant. Didn't want to picture someone else waiting for her replies, someone else who apparently cared whether I was home or not. Someone who had a place in her life I didn't know about. The uncertainty gnawed at me, a twisting, relentless ache that made it impossible to stay still. Around 4 in the morning, she stirred. I felt the mattress shift, heard the faint rustle of sheets. I closed my eyes, pretending to sleep. I didn't want her to know I was awake. Shamefully, I didn't want to face her. I heard her sit up, swing her legs over the edge, then tiptoe toward the hallway. I thought she might go to the bathroom, but when I heard the soft click of the living room door, followed by the quiet buzz of her phone, I knew she had gone out there for something else. I should have stayed in bed. Should have respected her privacy, or at least waited until morning. But the uncertainty was too much. I got up slowly, careful not to make the floorboards creak, and walked down the hallway until I reached the corner. She sat on the couch, hunched forward, her phone glowing in her hands. Her face was tense, conflicted, tired. I watched silently, hidden in the darkness. She typed something. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted it again. A soft, frustrated sound left her lips. Finally, she typed a short reply, her fingers trembling slightly. He's asleep. I can't talk right now. A wave of cold washed over me. So it was someone else. Someone she didn't want me to know about. Someone she was willing to wake up at 4 a.m. just to reassure. That realization sat in my stomach like a stone. Before I could step forward or retreat back to the bedroom, her phone rang quietly. Not loudly, just a faint vibration she quickly snatched into her hands. She didn't answer. Instead, she held it tightly, pressing her face into her palms. I can't do this, she whispered to herself, voice shaky. Not like this. Her words stunned me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Was she talking about me? About us? About him? Or was she talking about the lies she was living between us? I took a small step forward, the floor creaked faintly under my weight. She flinched, snapping her head up with eyes wide and guilty. How long have you been standing there? She asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Long enough, I said, stepping fully into the living room. My voice sounded calm, even though everything inside me felt like it was breaking apart. She looked devastated. Not angry, not defensive, just sad. I didn't want you to see that. What am I supposed to think? I asked. There's someone who texts you at 4 in the morning, asking about me. Someone you're hiding from me. She swallowed hard, her eyes glistening. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. She opened her mouth, but closed it again. Tears welled up in her eyes, and I hated how part of me still wanted to comfort her. I don't know how, she whispered. Try. She shook her head, wiping her cheek with the back of her hand. You'll hate me. I'm already hurting, I said quietly. What difference does it make? She looked at me then, really looked at me, and something in her expression shifted, like she was finally acknowledging the truth she'd been avoiding. Her voice trembled. I'm scared. Of what? Of losing everything. My brow furrowed. Everything. She nodded, looking down again. You. Him. Myself. The words hit me like a punch. So there is someone. She didn't deny it. She didn't explain. She simply closed her eyes, letting the silence answer for her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of everything she wasn't saying filled the space between us, suffocating and heavy. I felt dizzy, as if the ground had shifted beneath my feet. Finally, she whispered, I didn't plan any of this. I didn't mean for it to happen. And yet, it happened. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. I don't expect you to forgive me. I couldn't tell you. Not yet. Why not? Because if I told you, she whispered, I'd have to choose. The room froze. My heart stopped. Everything inside me quieted, then collapsed. Choose between what? I asked, my voice barely audible. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The truth was already there between us, heavy and undeniable. And in that moment, I realized that the silence we had been drowning in wasn't just distance anymore. It was betrayal. It was fear. The next morning everything felt strangely quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. She stayed in the bedroom longer than usual, as if hoping I'd leave for work before she had to face me. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a mug of coffee I didn't remember making, waiting for a door to open. When it finally did, she stepped out slowly, like someone approaching a battlefield. She didn't look at me at first. She moved around the kitchen with a sort of fragile caution, opening drawers, pretending to tidy up, touching things that didn't need touching. It was painful to watch her pretend everything was normal. Painful to watch her hands tremble when she thought I wasn't looking. We need to talk, I said quietly. She froze. Just stopped mid-movement, her fingers still resting on the edge of the drawer. After a long silence, she whispered, I know. She sat across from me, eyes red-rimmed but determined, like she had finally mustered the courage to confront the storm she had helped create. A part of me wanted to reach out and wipe the tear that slid down her cheek. Another part wanted to pull my hand back and close myself off forever. I never meant to hurt you, she said. I didn't want it to go this far. Then why did you let it? My voice cracked sharper than I meant, but I didn't apologize. Why didn't you talk to me? She stared at the table, her expression tight. Because I didn't know how to. Because I was confused. Because I was lost. Who is he? I asked. Her breath hitched. Someone who made me feel seen at a moment when I didn't know how to ask you for help. The words hit hard. A punch I hadn't expected, even though I should have. My jaw clenched. So it's my fault. Her head shot up. That's not what I said. But it's what you meant, I replied quietly. You were lonely. I get that. But you never came to me. You never tried. You think I didn't want to, she whispered. You were distant too. You stopped looking at me the way you used to. You stopped choosing me. I swallowed, taken aback. I never stopped choosing you. Maybe not out loud, she said, but things changed. We stopped talking. We stopped laughing. I felt like I was disappearing right in front of you, and you didn't even notice. I didn't know what to say to that. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been so caught up in my own world, my own stress, my own worries, that I didn't notice hers. Maybe we had both been drowning in silence, and she just reached for the first hand she saw. But that didn't justify the betrayal. A tear rolled down her cheek. He listened. And I didn't expect that. I didn't expect to feel something. The room tilted for a moment, my breath catching in my throat. I pressed my palms against the table to steady myself. So you replaced me, I said quietly. No. I didn't want to replace you. But I also didn't know how to fix us. She wiped her eyes angrily. And I was ashamed. Ashamed for letting it go so far. Ashamed for enjoying a connection I shouldn't have had. Ashamed for lying. Her honesty didn't lighten the pain. It deepened it. So what now? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. She looked at me with the kind of heartbreak that comes from hurting someone you still care about. I don't know. You said last night you'd have to choose, I reminded her. So choose. She looked terrified. If I choose you, I have to confess everything. I have to cut all ties with him. I have to fix what I broke. I have to face your anger, your disappointment, your pain. And if you choose him? I asked. She exhaled shakily. Then I lose the life we built. For a moment, she reached out, almost touching my hand, then stopped herself. I don't want to hurt either of you. That was when it hit me, she wasn't torn out of love. She was torn out of fear. Fear of choosing wrong. Fear of taking responsibility. Fear of losing something no matter which direction she turned. But someone always gets hurt in the truth. And someone always gets destroyed in the lies. The silence stretched between us like a tightening rope, and finally she whispered, I need time. I shook my head. Time won't change what happened. No, she admitted. But it might change what I'm willing to fight for. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know if it was hope or a warning. All I knew was that the woman sitting in front of me wasn't the same woman I fell in love with. Or maybe I wasn't the same man. Either way, the truth was no longer something we could avoid. It was staring us in the face. And the next days would decide whether we tried to rebuild what broke. Or watched it collapse completely. I thought giving her space for a few days would calm things down, or at least give us both a chance to breathe, but instead it only amplified everything we were avoiding. The apartment felt hollow without her presence, and yet when she was home, it felt suffocating. Every sound she made, the creak of the floorboards, the quiet closing of a door, the muted sigh she let out when she thought I wasn't listening, all of it pressed against me like reminders of a world we no longer shared. She stayed mostly silent that weekend. She moved around the apartment carefully, quietly, as if afraid of disturbing something fragile. Or maybe she was afraid of disturbing the guilt inside her. When we spoke, it was in short, cautious sentences. Answers without depth. Questions without follow-ups. Avoidance disguised as politeness. Every time my phone vibrated, my heart jumped, thinking it might be her trying to explain something, trying to mend what was broken. But it never was. And every time hers vibrated, she panicked slightly before locking it and shoving it into her pocket. It was a dance of fear and shame that neither of us knew how to stop. On Sunday morning, I woke up to an envelope on the kitchen table. My name on the front, written in her handwriting. For a moment, my heart stopped. I didn't know if it was goodbye or confession. I didn't know which one I feared more. Inside wasn't a letter. It was a printed screenshot. A message thread. Between her and him. She had crossed out most of it with a marker, leaving only one line visible, his line. He won't understand what you need the way I do. Just that sentence alone burned through me like acid. I stared at it for what felt like hours, my stomach churning, my pulse hammering so loudly I could hear it in my ears. When she walked into the kitchen and saw me holding the paper, she froze. I shouldn't have left that there, she whispered. Then why did you? My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She sat down slowly, staring at her hands. Because you deserve to know how far this went. How far did it go? I asked, my throat tightening around the words. She didn't look up. Not physically. But emotionally, she swallowed. I crossed lines I shouldn't have. It hurt. God, it hurt. But part of me already knew. The secrecy. The late-night messages. The way she lit up for someone else while dimming for me. What did you tell him about us? I asked. Her voice cracked. Too much. Things I should have shared with you instead. It felt like a slap. Why him? Because he listened without judgment. Because he wasn't part of my everyday life. Because it felt easier. Easier. That word echoed in my mind, sharp and bitter. She hadn't chosen him out of love. She had chosen him out of convenience. Out of cowardice. Out of fear of confronting the truth with me. I leaned back, staring at her. Do you still talk to him? She hesitated. And that hesitation was the answer. Before she could speak, her phone buzzed loudly on the counter, the sound slicing through the tension like a blade. She jumped, her eyes filling with dread. I didn't move. Neither did she. For a long moment, we both just stared at the phone. Answer it, I said. Her eyes widened. No. Then I will. I reached for it, but she grabbed it first, holding it tightly against her chest like it was something fragile she had to protect. Or like it was something dangerously alive. I said no, she whispered, her voice shaking. Why not? I asked. What are you hiding now? I'm not hiding anything, she insisted. Then let me see. The silence that followed was louder than any argument could have been. She held the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Tears filled her eyes again, not from sadness this time, but from panic. Finally she whispered, it's not him. My heartbeat stumbled. Then who? She didn't answer. She just stared at me with a look I couldn't decipher, guilt, fear, dread, and slowly set the phone face down on the counter. I moved toward it. She moved to block me. What's going on? I demanded, my voice rising despite my attempts to stay calm. Who is it? Please don't, she begged, tears spilling over now. Please. Not like this. Like this. Like what? It felt like I was losing grip on what I thought my life was. Every answer she gave only created more questions. Every truth she revealed uncovered an even darker one beneath it. If it's not him, I said slowly, then who is reaching out to you? Her lips trembled. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. It was like she couldn't physically force them out. And then she whispered the words that made my blood run cold. I think, it's someone from my past. That was the moment I realized we weren't just dealing with a broken relationship. We were dealing with something bigger. Something deeper. Something that had been hiding in the shadows long before he ever appeared. Something, or someone, she wasn't ready to face. And now, because of her secrets, because of her silence, it had found its way back to us. For the rest of that morning, her words echoed inside me like a warning I couldn't decode. Someone from my past. It sounded vague enough to mean anything, yet heavy enough to mean everything. I had 1,000 questions lined up in my throat, but asking any of them felt like stepping deeper into a storm I wasn't prepared to face. She didn't offer more. She sat silently at the table, her fingers trembling around her coffee cup, staring into the dark liquid as if it held answers she had been running from. I kept watching her carefully, trying to understand which version of her I was looking at, the woman I loved, the stranger she'd become, or someone in between. Do you want to explain what that means? I asked eventually, quieter than I expected. She shook her head slowly. I don't know how much to say. I don't know where to start. Start anywhere. She gave a weak, humorless smile. If I do, you'll walk away. Let me decide that, I said, even though part of me was scared of my own promise. She took a deep breath, but just as she seemed ready to speak, her phone lit up again. This time the screen briefly flipped upward before she shoved it face down. In that split second, I saw the name. Unknown caller. My stomach tightened. It wasn't him. It wasn't a friend. It wasn't a saved contact. Whoever it was didn't want to be known. You said it's someone from your past, I reminded her. Who? Her hands shook. Someone I thought I'd never hear from again. That doesn't narrow it down. She swallowed hard. He wasn't a boyfriend. Not exactly. Not exactly. I echoed, a bitter edge creeping into my voice. She rubbed her forehead as if the memory itself caused her pain. It's not simple. It's not something I'm proud of. I don't need pride, I said quietly. I need truth. But instead of answering, she stood up and walked away. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just slowly, as if her bones were too heavy. She locked herself in the bathroom, and I heard the faucet run as if she hoped the sound of water could hide her tears. I sank onto the couch, pressing my palms into my eyes. I wanted to be patient. I wanted to be supportive. I wanted to believe there was a version of this story where we'd come out stronger. But every time I tried convincing myself, her silence reminded me that this wasn't just a misunderstanding, this was a collision course with something dark and long buried. We spent the rest of the day avoiding each other, orbiting the same apartment like two planets kept apart by gravity and fear. She cleaned things that didn't need cleaning, moved objects for no reason, folded and refolded blankets and towels until the fabric looked worn. I noticed she kept glancing at the front door as though she expected it to open at any moment. As though she feared it would. That evening, she finally approached me. She looked smaller than I remembered, tired, hollow, drained. I want to fix this, she said softly. How? I asked. We don't even know what this is. She sat next to me, but not too close. I think I should tell him to stop contacting me. You think? I asked, raising an eyebrow. She winced. I don't know if he'll listen. A spark of anger flared inside me. Why wouldn't he? Who is this man to you that he feels entitled to call you at all hours? She closed her eyes and whispered, because he used to have power over me. More than I ever admitted. The words sliced through the tension like a blade. My anger collapsed into something tighter, colder, fear mixed with confusion. What do you mean, power? She shook her head. I never told you about the years before we met. The things I lived through. The people I trusted that I shouldn't have. The mistakes I made when I was young and scared. You don't have to give me every detail, I said. Just give me something real. Her voice trembled. He wasn't just someone I talked to. He was someone who controlled parts of my life. Someone who made me feel small. Someone I tried to escape from. I stared at her, throat tight. And he's contacting you now? She nodded. I don't know why. But I feel like he knows things he shouldn't. Things he couldn't. I don't want him in my life. I don't want him in our life. Then block him, I urged. It's not that simple. Why not? She looked at me with tears shimmering in her eyes. Because I'm scared blocking him will make him come here. The room fell silent. A deep, suffocating kind of silence that came with a realization neither of us wanted to face. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This wasn't just emotional confusion or an affair or mixed feelings. This was about fear. Real fear. Fear of someone who shouldn't have had access to her life anymore, yet somehow did. What do you want me to do? I asked. Her voice cracked as she whispered, help me. Don't leave me alone with this. Despite everything, the confusion, the betrayal, the anger simmering beneath my skin, I felt something else take over. Compassion. Protective instinct. The memory of the love we shared before everything fractured. And the crushing understanding that whatever this man had been in her life, he wasn't just someone she'd flirted with or gotten attached to. He was someone dangerous. I reached out slowly, touching her hand. I'm not leaving. But you have to tell me everything. Not bits. Not pieces. Everything. She nodded, tears falling freely now. I will. Just, not tonight. I need time. I need strength. And I'm afraid of what will come after I say it out loud. For the first time in days, she leaned into me. Resting her head against my shoulder. And for the first time in days, I allowed myself to hold her. But even in that moment of closeness, I felt it. The shadow of something larger creeping into our lives. And I knew. Whatever truth she was afraid to tell me. Was going to change everything. Over the next 2 days, the air in our apartment thickened into something I could almost feel on my skin. A heavy, electric tension, like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm finally cracks open. She barely slept. I barely ate. We moved around each other carefully, as if any sudden movement might trigger a collapse neither of us were ready for. Every time her phone buzzed, she flinched so violently it made my heart race. She stopped answering calls altogether. She turned off notifications, silenced everything, but even in the quiet, she seemed haunted by the expectation of an incoming message. I watched her stare at the blank screen for minutes at a time, shoulders shaking, breath shallow, as if the silence itself was worse than the call. By the third night, she couldn't take it anymore. She paced the living room like a trapped animal. I sat on the edge of the couch, my hands clenched, unable to comfort her, unable to push her for the truth. Both options felt like fire. Finally, she stopped pacing and sank onto the floor, leaning her back against the wall. She wrapped her arms around her knees and tucked her head down. I can't do this, she whispered. I can't keep pretending you won't hate me. I told you, I said softly, I won't decide anything until I know everything. She looked up then, and her eyes were swollen from crying, her face pale, her breathing uneven. You already hate me, she said. I see it in the way you look at me. I don't hate you, I said. But I am breaking. And so are you. And so is everything between us. She let out a cracked, bitter laugh. Then maybe it's better if I just leave. The words hit me like a slap. You think running will help? I think staying will destroy you, she whispered. And I can't do that to you. Then tell me, I said, voice trembling. Tell me who he is. Tell me what he wants. Tell me what happened to you. She looked away again, her hands shaking. I was 19, she said quietly. I trusted the wrong person. I let him into my life in ways I shouldn't have. He made me believe I needed him. She swallowed, her voice barely audible. And when I tried to leave, he made sure I couldn't. My stomach twisted. You mean he? Not physically, she said quickly. But emotionally. Manipulation. Control. Threats. Promises I believed. Promises he never meant to keep. Why is he back now? I asked. She closed her eyes. Because he always said he'd come back for me when he thought I was strong enough again. When he thought I had something to lose. And he thinks that's now. She nodded. He knows about you. He knows we live together. He knows where I work. He knows everything. The words chilled me. How? I don't know, she whispered. But he always found ways. He always watched from a distance. He always knew how to appear when I was weakest. I exhaled shakily, trying to absorb the weight of her confession. It felt like 1,000 puzzle pieces suddenly clicked into place, the fear, the secrecy, the panic every time the phone vibrated. This wasn't about betrayal. Not in the way I had feared. This was about history. About trauma. About someone who had sunk their claws into her long before I existed in her life. But then a new question formed, sharp and painful. And what about your messages with him? I asked softly. The ones you didn't want me to see. She looked ashamed. He reached out months ago. Before our relationship started getting bad. I swallowed hard. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought I could handle it on my own. I thought if I ignored him, he'd go away. And then. I got tired. I was overwhelmed. And he was familiar in ways you weren't. I know that sounds awful. It sounds human, I said, though it tore me apart to admit it. I didn't want him, she insisted. But I couldn't shut him out either. Part of me was still scared of him. And part of me just didn't want to feel alone. And you felt alone with me? I asked. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The truth hung between us, raw and unbearable. Silence settled in again, but this time it wasn't avoidance. It was something darker. A realization. A deep, cavernous understanding that some wounds don't stay in the past just because you leave the person who caused them. Finally, I asked the question I had been holding back, terrified of the answer. What does he want now? Her lips trembled. He wants me back. I felt my body stiffen. Back. She nodded. He said the life I built with you isn't real. That you'll leave me once you know the whole story. That he's the only one who understands who I really am. Anger flared inside me, sharp and primal. And you believe him? No, she whispered. But I believed him once. That's what scares me. He knows exactly how to get inside my head. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to protect her from someone she had been afraid to even name. Then her phone buzzed again. And this time, she didn't touch it. We both stared at it, frozen, as the vibration rattled across the table. When it finally stopped, she whispered, I think he's coming. My chest tightened. Here. She nodded slowly. He said he would talk to me face to face if I didn't respond. He said he knows where we live. The room spun. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt real fear. Not jealousy. Not betrayal. Fear. Fear for her. Fear for myself. Fear for what was about to walk through our door. And in that moment, I knew. The storm we'd been avoiding was no longer approaching. It had arrived. For hours after she told me he might come, we sat in the dimly lit living room, both of us too afraid to talk, too afraid to stay silent. She curled into herself on the couch, knees pulled tightly to her chest, like she was bracing for an impact she'd already lived through once. I kept pacing, back and forth, because sitting still made me feel like the walls were closing in. The ticking of the clock on the wall felt louder than anything I'd ever heard. Every second that passed sounded like a countdown. But nothing happened. No knock. No buzz. No shadow outside the window. Just silence. And somehow, that was even worse. At some point she spoke, her voice so fragile I almost didn't hear it. I think he's already watching. I stopped mid-step. What do you mean? She didn't lift her head. He always watched from a distance before. He never showed up right away. He waited until I was looking for him. Her voice cracked. That's what he did back then. He made me anticipate him. Made me anxious. Made me dread the moment he would appear. That's how he kept control. Her words sent a chill racing down my spine. It didn't feel paranoid. It felt practiced. Learned. Conditioned. Did he ever threaten you? I asked. She nodded slowly. Not directly. He didn't need to. He threatened my life without ever using the words. He'd show up places without warning. He'd make comments about where I'd been, who I was with, what I wore. He had a way of knowing things no one told him. How? I don't know, she whispered. I thought maybe it was just coincidence. Or maybe I talked about things more than I realized. But deep down, I always felt like he was collecting pieces of me. I sat beside her, not touching her yet, but close enough that she could feel I wasn't going anywhere. You're not alone this time. She looked up at me with red, glassy eyes. I don't want him ruining what we have. I hesitated. But we're already falling apart. She flinched at the honesty, but didn't look away. Do you want to fix it? She asked quietly. The question hung in the air like smoke. Yes, I said. But wanting isn't enough if you're still torn between me and him. Or between me and your past. A tear slipped down her cheek. I don't want him. But you didn't block him. Because I'm terrified, she whispered. I'm terrified of what he'll do if I cut him off. He's already angry. I didn't answer. My jaw tightened. So what? We're supposed to live in fear forever? Looking over our shoulders. No, she said firmly. I don't want that life anymore. Something in her tone shifted then, something strong, something steady, something I hadn't heard from her since before this all began. She wiped her eyes and sat up straighter. I'm done letting fear control me, she said, voice trembling but determined. I'm done letting him live in my head. I'm done letting him dictate my choices. I felt something shift inside me too. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, she wasn't just reacting. She wasn't shrinking or dodging or folding into old patterns. She was fighting. Then tell me what you need, I said. She inhaled shakily. I need you to trust that I'm telling you the truth. I need you to see that I'm not choosing him. I'm choosing to face what I ran from. I didn't answer right away. I let her words settle. Then I nodded once. Okay. She blinked in surprise. Okay. Yes. If you're ready to fight this, I'll fight it with you. Her expression softened, relief mixed with disbelief, mixed with grief for everything we'd already lost. But just when it felt like we were finally stepping towards something honest, her phone vibrated again. She didn't move. Neither did I. We stared at the phone as it buzzed across the coffee table, the screen lighting up with each tremor. After a long moment, she whispered, "You answer it." I froze. Are you sure? She nodded. I need to know who's on the other side. And I need you to know too. My fingers shook as I picked up the phone. The caller ID flashed again. Unknown caller. I accepted the call. Hello. I said. For a full second, there was nothing. No breathing. No background noise. Just a chilling, deliberate silence. Then a low, calm male voice spoke. Put her on. My blood ran cold. Who is this? I demanded. He didn't answer the question. Instead he said, with terrifying certainty. Tell her I'm outside. And then the line went dead. She covered her mouth with her trembling hands, eyes wide with terror. I walked to the window slowly, heart pounding, breath unsteady. And there, under the dim streetlight, half hidden in the shadows, stood a man. Still. Quiet. Watching. He didn't move. He just waited. Something inside me snapped then. Something primal. Something beyond fear. Something that was no longer about jealousy, or betrayal, or confusion. Something protective. Something fierce. Something certain. For the first time, I understood what she had been running from. And for the first time, I realized. We weren't just dealing with her past anymore. Her past had come for us. The moment I saw the man standing under the streetlight, I expected something inside me to collapse. Fear. Panic. Rage. Something sharp and violent. But instead, a strange stillness washed over me, an unexpected clarity, like every scattered piece of the past week suddenly clicked into place. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't doubting. I wasn't trying to decipher half-truths or read between lines. For the first time, I understood exactly what we were dealing with. Exactly what she had been carrying. Exactly why she couldn't tell me everything at once. And strangely, that understanding made me calm. She wasn't calm. Far from it. The moment she saw my face, saw the way I froze, the way every muscle in my body locked, she whispered, "He's here, isn't he?" I nodded slowly. She broke apart. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly, like something inside her unraveled after being wound too tightly for too long. She sank to her knees on the living room floor, pressing her hands to her mouth to muffle the sobs, her whole body trembling like a frightened child. I wanted to run outside. I wanted to confront him, to push him away from our life, to do something, anything, to protect her. But I knew rushing out there in anger would only feed him exactly what he wanted. Men like him fed on chaos. They thrived in it. They wanted you to lose control, to be impulsive, to react emotionally, because that's how they stayed in power. So instead, I knelt next to her. Not touching her, she was shaking too violently, but close enough that she could feel I wasn't going anywhere. "You're safe," I said quietly. She shook her head quickly, tears spilling onto the floor. "No. No, I'm not. Not with him out there. Not with what he's capable of. You're not alone. That's even worse," she whispered, her voice cracked and desperate. "If you get hurt because of him, I'll never forgive myself." I took a slow breath. I won't do anything stupid. She finally looked up at me. You don't know him. Then tell me, I said gently. Tell me everything. She squeezed her eyes shut, struggling to breathe. He knows how to twist things. He knows how to manipulate people. He knows how to make you doubt yourself, your memories, your sanity. If you confront him, he'll try to pull you in. He'll try to use your anger. He'll try to make you the problem. I'm not afraid of him, I said. You should be, she whispered. I sat with her until her breathing steadied, until her trembling softened, until the panic loosened its hold. When she finally looked at me again, something had changed in her eyes, still fear, but also something else. Resolve. Strength. A decision forming. I can't let him control my life anymore, she said quietly. I can't keep letting him take things from me. I nodded. Then we face this together. No, she said, shaking her head. I need to face him. But not like this. Not through fear. Not through hiding. I need to confront him on my terms. How? She wiped her face and took a deep breath. We call the police. I blinked, surprised by her sudden certainty. You said he knows where you work, I reminded her. Where we live. He's been watching. But you have no proof. Now I do, she said softly. You answered his call. You saw him outside. And I saved the messages. All of them. Even the ones I was too ashamed to show you before. She got up slowly, walking to the bedroom. When she returned, she carried a small folder, thin, worn, trembling slightly in her hands. I kept these, she said quietly, handing it to me. Every message. Every email. Every time he contacted me after I left. I didn't know why I kept them. I thought it was guilt. Or fear. But maybe it was because some part of me knew I'd need them one day. I opened the folder. There were pages, printed conversations, screenshots, notes she'd written to herself describing encounters I knew nothing about. Emotional manipulation. Threats disguised as affection. Promises mixed with warnings. A pattern so clear it made my stomach twist. How long has this been going on? I asked. Years, she whispered. Long before you. Long before I learned how to say no to people who scare me. Something inside me softened. Not pity, respect. Admiration. And something deeper, understanding that the girl she had been back then wasn't the woman standing in front of me now. We take this to the police, I said. Tonight. She hesitated. You really think they'll help? We're not doing this alone, I said firmly. Not anymore. She stared at me for a long moment, her eyes glistening, her breathing unsteady. Then she nodded slowly, like someone finally accepting a truth they had been running from. Okay, she whispered. Let's do it. And just like that, something shifted. The fear didn't disappear. The man outside didn't vanish. The trauma didn't unwind itself or dissolve from her memory. But for the first time, she wasn't hiding. She wasn't shrinking. She wasn't running. She was standing. And standing with her, finally, fully, was me. When we stepped outside together, she slipped her hand into mine. She was still shaking, but she didn't pull away. Across the street, the man under the streetlight took a small step forward. But for the first time, she didn't flinch. And in that moment, something remarkable happened. The power he once had over her began to break. Not because he changed. But because she did. Because she wasn't alone anymore. Because she was no longer afraid to face the truth. And because together, we were taking back her life. One step, one truth, one breath at a time. We didn't speak on the way to the police station. The night air felt colder than usual, sharp against my skin, but somehow her hand in mine stayed warm, trembling. Yes, but warm. She kept looking straight ahead, her shoulders squared with a kind of fragile defiance I'd never seen in her before. Not bravado. Not confidence. Something braver. Acceptance. The man under the streetlight didn't follow us. Or maybe he did, and we simply didn't look back. But as we walked away, I could feel his gaze burning into the back of my neck like an invisible weight. Every step felt like walking through water, slow, heavy, deliberate. But we took them anyway. When we reached the station, she let go of my hand only briefly, to wipe her eyes, to steady her breath, to gather every last piece of courage scattered inside her. Then she took my hand again, holding it with a grip that said she wasn't just doing this for herself. She was doing it for us. Inside, everything felt too bright. Too clean. Too structured. The walls were lined with missing posters and community notices, all the signs of other lives, other fears, other stories. It made ours feel suddenly real, not a nightmare trapped in the walls of our apartment, but something happening here, in the open, in a place designed to confront truth. A woman at the desk looked up. How can I help you? She froze. I squeezed her hand, whispering, You're not alone. Not anymore. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. I need to report someone. Are you in danger? The officer asked gently. She hesitated. Then, I think I could be. Something inside her shifted with those words. Saying it out loud made it undeniable. Made it no longer just a fear but a truth. And truth, even when painful, is grounding. The officer took us into a smaller room, a quiet, private space with a table and 2 chairs. She sat across from us, clicking her pen, waiting patiently. I could see my partner breathing shallowly, staring at her hands again, just like she had the night everything started unraveling. Tell me what happened, the officer said softly. And she did. Not perfectly. Not linearly. Not without pauses or tears. But she told everything she had been carrying for years. The manipulation. The control. The way he inserted himself into her life again and again. The messages. The threats hidden in affection. The fear of blocking him. The shame of not leaving sooner. The guilt of letting it affect us. The panic of seeing him outside. Every confession felt like she was peeling away a layer of skin, raw, painful, but necessary to heal. At one point she broke down completely, tears spilling onto the table as she whispered, "I thought it was my fault." "It never was," the officer said firmly. "Men like that build cages in your mind long before they ever hold you in their hands." Her breath shook, but her shoulders loosened, as if someone had just unlocked a door inside her she didn't know was still closed. When she handed over the folder, the printed messages, the screenshots, the notes, her hands stopped trembling. And when the officer took them, examining them with careful attention, something in my partner's posture changed. She wasn't collapsing anymore. She was releasing. After hours of talking, documenting, answering questions, signing forms, the officer finally leaned forward. "We'll take care of this," she said. "You're not alone now. Not legally, not emotionally. He won't intimidate you anymore." My partner nodded slowly, her eyes glassy but steady. The officer gave her a small card with numbers to call, emergency lines, support groups, counseling services. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Surviving someone like him isn't weakness. It's resilience. And reporting him is strength." When we walked out of the station, the sky was starting to lighten. Dawn creeping across the horizon, soft and pale, brushing the tops of buildings with muted gold. The air smelled different, like something new. Something clean. She exhaled deeply, as if finally releasing a breath she had been holding for years. "I feel lighter," she whispered. "I'm proud of you," I said. She looked up at me, surprised. "You are?" "Yes," I said. "Because you didn't just run. You didn't hide. You faced something most people couldn't." She stepped closer, her forehead resting gently against my chest. "Do you think we can fix us?" I hesitated, not out of doubt, but out of honesty. "I think we can try," I said. "If we start from truth." She nodded slowly. "No more secrets. No more fear," I added. When we reached home, she stopped before unlocking the door. She wasn't trembling this time. She wasn't staring into shadows. She wasn't waiting for him to appear. She was breathing. Just breathing. Calmly. Fully. Clearly. Inside the apartment, she walked straight to the window and pulled the curtains open, wide, intentional, fearless. The street was empty. No shadows. No watchers. No ghosts. Just morning light. She turned to me, her expression soft and raw. "Thank you." "For what?" I asked. "For staying," she said. "For seeing me. For not being him." I crossed the room and took her hands gently. "You don't have to carry his shadow anymore." She nodded, tears slipping silently down her cheeks, but they weren't tears of fear this time. They were release. Relief. Rebirth. We sat on the couch together as the sun rose higher, filling the room with warmth. For the first time in what felt like forever, the silence between us wasn't heavy. It wasn't avoidance. It wasn't fear. It was peace. Not perfect. Not complete. But real. And for the first time, I realized something important. Our story hadn't broken us. It had revealed us. And now, finally, we had the chance to rebuild something new. Not the old version shaped by fear and assumptions and unspoken pain. But something honest. Something brave. Something ours. She squeezed my hand gently. "I'm ready," she whispered. "So am I." And just like that, we stepped into the first day of the rest of our lives. Not unscarred, not unbroken, but unafraid. It was the beginning of the end.